show. We've finally got music and stuff that Sharon was complaining about. Welcome to the show. Oh my God, it's fading out. And welcome. Hi, Sharon.
Hi, Mark. Was it meant to fade out?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. It wasn't just going to stop. That's right. Let me explain to you how it works in the podcasting community, because clearly I am an expert in that field now. Actually, I won't do that because that's not what we're here for. Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Here to Tinpot 2. But it's a little bit of a special one, this one, isn't it, Sharon?
Yeah, I'm excited for this. These are going to be good.
You can tell that in a voice. Because the reason why we are excited and what I am currently thumbing through my hand now, listeners, viewers, we have a book. Now, this isn't one of those things where they go, oh, they've got a book, here they are to plug it. I actually think that this is quite a unique book. So as we've said before in the past, we've got our own companies, MKL Innovation, MKL CX. CX is all about customer experience, humanizing tech. We're not going to go into all the corporate BS because that's not what these podcasts are about. But when we wrote this book, and I'll hold it up to the camera so people can see, and for listeners, it's called You Are Sexy and We Know It.
CX'y.
When we wrote this book, we wrote it from a couple of point of views because we kicked around this idea for so long, didn't we, Sharon, around? We wanted a book. We had a lot of stuff to say. We got a load of cool stories. But God forbid did we not want it to be another boring corporate how-to book. And from what we've seen in the reviews and people that have met us in person have said that the book is a breath of fresh air, if I can quote some people, and say that it's very funny. There's a lot of funny limericks in it, but there's a lot of key takeaways as well. So what we decided to do, because people ask us questions about this all the time, and we just think it's good to talk about it because we believe that the messages in here are really powerful, but they're quite funny as well. We're going to do a 10-part mini-series within the Here to Tinpot 2 podcast. So the way that's going to work, and bear with me, because we've debated this back and forth, and finally I won a debate actually with Sharon, which was quite refreshing. So the way that's going to work is there are a number of chapters in this book, as you can imagine, and there are quite a lot of chapters. I can't even remember how many chapters we've got, Sharon, but I'm just looking through now.
80.
Probably what we should have done is put how many?
80.
80 chapters. So we had to pick 10 of that 80, and we have picked 5 each. And what we're going to do is we're going to do a little bit of a audio book version of this. Now, for those of you out there who have read David Goggins' book, Can't Hurt Me, unbelievable book, fantastic book, life-changing book. And if you haven't read it. Obviously, I'm very well versed because I can speak clear English. Now, if you've also listened to the audio version of that book, there's a very interesting thing that David Goggins does. And I can be so bold to say we're basically going to copy that methodology because I think it works really well, is he will have someone who helped him write the book voice the chapter. So it isn't David Goggins voicing the chapter per self in terms of the words. But at the end of that chapter, he will add his flavour to it. So what you get in there is you're getting the main meal in the chapter, and he'll come in and go, let me add a little bit of spice, and he'll salt bay it. Look at that. Put a bit of salt bay on it. He'll come and do that. So we're going to do something similar here. So, as I said, 10 chapters, 5 each. Sharon's going to go first. Sharon's brave enough to have volunteered first. Viewers, if you're seeing this, or you can tell by Sharon's face that she's very happy to be going first. Now, the chapters are structured in quite a unique way for this book. So there's a number of ways that the chapter is structured. So at the start of the chapter, we have a key takeaway. And then we have something called an MKLism, a main body, and then a call to action. And the reason why we did those is it was depending on your timing. So if you're just about to run into a meeting and you want to learn something specific about CX, but you've only got like 30 seconds, you'll just flip to the key takeaway and it will give you that instantaneous bit of information that you can go, right, yeah, I need to remember I get that killer line. But also, if you've got a little bit of time and you want to have a bit of fun, you want to laugh, you want to read a funny story, many of the capers that myself, John and Sharon have been up to over the years, something that will make you smile. We have what's known as an MKLism, obviously creative title writing there, but the MKLism is just that. It's very much our spin on that specific topic, but with a little bit of pep, should I say. Again, another bit of salt bane. And then you have the main body. Now, the main body is where you get into the detail. So this is Sharon, for example, the one that Sharon's going to talk about. This is where she flexes her muscles, her CX muscles, to really give you that key piece of information and what you need to learn and actually put into practice here. So you've had the quick takeaway, you've had the little bit of a fun to warm you up to the chapter. Now you're getting into the meat of it. Now you're going to eat your sandwich. And then the call to action bit at the end is very much just that. It is a call to action. So you've read all this stuff. Great. Now what do I need to do with it? Well, then you need to do this. But as I said, Sharon's going to read the chapter as it is wrote in the book. And then what we're going to do once Sharon has read that chapter is we're going to discuss it. But this is supposed to be a little bit of fun as well. So no doubt over the course of this 10-part series, more so me than Sharon, I'll forget what I've wrote down even though I'm reading the words in front of me, and I'll make some mistakes, which is why I've got my book here like an altar boy, hoping to do a good job. But Sharon's chapter is called Eat Your Own Dog Food. That's all I'm going to say about that. I'm going to hand over to Sharon. Sharon's going to give probably a 30-second intro to the chapter, and then she's going to go into the actual main body, or sorry, should I say the main chapter itself, and start reading.
Yeah.
So, Sharon, over to you.
Yes. And the reason why I'm looking slightly apprehensive is because I recorded a voiceover for a video recently. And if you'd have heard the mess I made of certain bits of it for the vocals, you'll know why I'm a bit like, oh.
Excellent.
But I've got 4 pages.
You've got what?
I will do my very best to make it comprehensible.
You do a great job. We're all waiting.
There are some swear words in there. So, Mark, I don't know if you want to...
Beep.
Yes.
Or maybe just... I'll just read the swear words. Who cares? I don't mind about it. I mean, it'd be funny to hear Sharon swear. But look, you've got to read it as it is wrote in the book.
But there's asterisks in the book, so...
Well, then do that then. Go yeet.
All right. So eat your own dog food. Now, I've picked this out of all of the 80 chapters as one of the key chapters that I believe is a key principle for a customer experience CX. And it is something that we spent so much time in MKL CX and MKL on that we've actually created our own product on it. That's how much we believe in it. So I wanted to kick off by telling you, first of all, eat your own dog food. The concept of this is, and my son was asking me what this meant the other day, actually, so I got a chance to practice. But it's, if you are a dog food company, obviously you're not going to eat dog food very often. So how do you know that your product is any good? How do you know that it tastes right? It's not gritty. When you pour it into the bowl, it makes the right sounds. It smells good. Doesn't go off, anything like that. So the concept of eating your own dog food is basically shop your own shop. And I'll tell you a bit more about this as we go, but kind of just get that thought in your head of eating your own dog food is something that you probably don't do very often. And I cannot tell you the rewards that you can reap if you do it. This is how winners are made, as we like to say in MKL. So key takeaway for this one, shop your own shop. And if you can't, simulate. And I put that in capital letters, simulate, because there's no excuses here. We can always test it. So onto the MKLism, and I'll just say mine aren't quite as funny as Mark's. So look out for Mark's ones.
Hey, this is supposed to be an audio read for read, word for word. No little ad libs. That's at the end. Just want to keep you on point, please, Sean.
I will ad lib if I want to. Right. So previously, I worked for a retail chain, and I remember overhearing one of my senior colleagues say that they weren't the target demographic for our brand, and so they never shopped with us. I've got a bit of a limited poker face. I remember being a bit shocked at the way that they said it. It was incredibly smug and a bit snooty. It just made me want to hit him, if I'm honest. That moment really sharpened my focus. It's always made me wonder how you can make valid decisions that affect the future of a business, the employees, the customers, if you don't understand or actually experience your customer experience. Answer, you can't. I'm not just talking shop here, excuse the pun, but when did you last dine at your own restaurant, book into your own garage, or eat your own dog food? Obviously, I don't expect you to do the last one on the list. I do. Literally, but you get the idea. This should be the simplest, most obvious point in the book, hence why we're starting here. Yet so many people, leaders in particular, shy away from it, assuming that they know the customer journey as they've been in the company for 18 years. Okay, but have you ever actually ordered anything from your website? Have you called your help desk out of hours? Have you tried the chat function? Recently? If not, how can you possibly gauge firsthand whether your CX is any good? Remember that the customer journey is often not linear. It's rarely linear. It can be unpredictable, mainly because there are so many channels and timing can be interesting. A customer may jump from an app to a phone call, to email, to eventually checking out online. And that's exactly what it looks like when I book an airline seat or a holiday. I'll shop around, I'll have a look, I'll flip from place to place. This is why it's important to know what your customers actually do rather than assuming that we know. So then we go into the main body. So when did you last shop your own shop? The why. Now I could list a million different reasons why we should test our own CX. Firstly, we get to rub elbows amongst our customers if it's a real life situation. And I so appreciate what that phrase means since the pandemic, real life situation. We see their body language as they queue, their expressions as they pay, or when they complain, when they clock our prices, or when they're greeted by our staff. But just as valid is when our customer-facing teams are remote from the customer. We're also able to feel the customer's joy and the discomfort just as they do. I can't tell you the volume of projects that have rocketed to the top of the funding list after a senior leader has spoken to a customer directly or had a family member complain or felt the customer's pain themselves. Suddenly, shit gets done. I did it. Naughty word alert, sorry. But that is a key point there. I'm going to stop for a minute. That is a key point. If you want sponsorship for your CX project, get your senior people to test the customer journey for themselves. You'll soon see how they move forward. Mark, stop giving me eyes. I'm allowed to ad lib if I want to.
We're ad libbing here. This is literally not what we agreed, but I can't stop it now. You've done it, and it's live, so continue. Mine will be very different. Part 2 will be better.
It's not just for leaders, though. It's agonizingly obvious when we ring a helpline for assistance, and it's clear that the agent does not have a clue how to navigate the system they're meant to be guiding us through. Every single customer-facing agent should have completed the steps of a process that a customer needs to complete if they're supporting that customer process. Again, it's obvious, right? So why is there so much pain and resistance around the back to the floor days? A select few embrace it. They learn how to use the tills, drive the fans, to pick the items, take the calls. Others stand about taking bored selfies. They simply just don't see the value. But there's always a way. Do you remember I said at the start about not making excuses? So what happens if it's a service you don't need as an individual? It's something aimed at industry or commercial. Or what if you provide patient care or it's dog food? Obviously, you can't become a patient just to test out your own patient journey. Okay, let's pause. What we did in the last few sentences was just come up with excuses. There's always a way to shop your own shop, even if you get all the way to the moment of no return and stop. We can park in the patient car park. We can check out the patient comms. We can try the patient food. And for those of you who've gone through labour, how amazing is your first meal and the first shower? Wouldn't it be amazing if they were at least adequate for what we've just been through? Burnt toast doesn't really cut it, does it? Food in any experience is not to be overlooked. Airlines, take note. At MKL, we provide commercial Internet of Things solutions as part of our offering. Not something I particularly need in my own house, but there are a lot of aspects that we offer that I can test out. Our automated customer comms from our software, the engineer on-site visit, or our cheerful greetings on the helpline, to name just a few. If you really can't live your own experience, then do the next best thing, simulate it. Also at MKL, we run white pumpkin events where companies come and simulate the complete customer journey off-site with us. And this works especially well if you're changing or creating a new customer proposition. So we get into the how do you do it then. This works especially well if you're changing or creating a new customer proposition. Those delivering the service play out the interactions with basic props, least number of distractions as possible, so we can have a good, hard look at how everything runs and really put ourselves in the customer's shoes. When the leadership join in, rather than just observe, either as the customer or as the provider role, it works a million times better. Being off-site allows everyone to completely immerse themselves and clearly hear the customer voice. We journey map at the same time, video where it adds value, and then we watch the whole thing back with the map and ask what everyone learned and how they are going to simplify, add consistency, and increase delight. And those are 3 things that we talk about throughout the book. It's a valuable day out, but the key value comes afterwards. Our businesses live and die by the standard of their customer experiences. So after you've had a good sniff, kick the tires, taken our operation for a whirl, what we do next is vital. So, you've eaten your own dog food. If you love the taste, wow, congratulations. Now you need all of your team to eat it too, to become real advocates. We all know how much easier it is to sell a product if we believe in it. Customers can feel sincerity. So get your team touching, feeling, eating, if appropriate, your products and services. Make sure it's accessible to all of them. If that's free tickets or reservations or discounts, etc., then get it done. Protect it, keep it current. Ensure that decisions aren't made to the detriment of your customer experience. Keep checking back. Or maybe you've tasted the dog food and it wasn't so hot. Okay, so now we know. Now we can fix it. So what else can we do? We can go and have a good sniff about elsewhere. What's out there? What's that other airline doing? Why is that other hairdresser's always booked up for weeks when ours isn't? Why do people still go to that MOT place even though it's way shabbier than ours? Don't just read about them, go and see for yourself. Go and test their dog food. Ask your teams what amazing experiences have our teams felt in our sector that we don't do. Gemba walks, ask Google if you're not sure. Basically seeing your customer experience in situ. Go and do it. Eating your own dog food is not a one-off, it's a mindset. If we want to be leaders worth our salt, we need to be so invested in our offering that we really know it. We know what will impact it and how. Not to be too cringy, but we need to have our finger on the pulse of the customer-facing business, which means go and shop your shop. Call to action. So, tell me about your dog food. Is it the best it can be every time? Would you eat it? If not, you know what to do. Watch the process, feel the process, live the process. Book in an opportunity with your company to do this today.
Well done. B+ on that, because there was some ad-libbing. So if I'm reading this book back, I'll go, oh, I didn't know there was a little bit of pepper in that chapter there. I mean, eating your own dog food, you just didn't eat your own dog food in regards to the instructions that we agreed prior to filming, but we can move past that. That was very good. I remember when I first joined, I think it was Whitbread at the time, the guys that own Premier Inn and did own Costa Coffee before they sold it to Coca-Cola. And I remember I went out for a day with a ROM, ROM, Regional Operations Manager. And I believe, if I can remember, the ROM's job was to look after the general managers of the site, basically operational leadership, making sure the sites were running well. There's a hierarchy structure, as you can imagine. But I remember going out with this ROM, and we went to 6 different restaurants. And in 6 different restaurants, he ordered, in every single one, he ordered at least 4 or 5 different dishes. So we'd go in, obviously people knew who he was. He'd go in, we'd find a table, and then sit down as if he was. It was all fake because I knew who he was, but the waiter or the waitress would come over to him, and then he would say, "I'll have the fish and chips, the mixed grill, the salmon, the pie and peas or whatever it was, and a dessert." Now there was just me and him there, but he would order that, and then he'd have all these dishes laid out in front of him, and then he'd get his cards out, and then look at how the dish was presented in regards to how it was served, but then also taste it. And I thought, what's going on here? Why is this happening? And it was only when really we started to understand it, and then you called it eating your own dog food, which is something I've never heard before. He was eating his own dog food, wasn't he?
That's exactly what he was doing. And I like Whitbread did that really well, especially I remember Beefeater. So they always say that they're all about steak, aren't they? They're a steakhouse. I remember you might have done the same, Mark, working in the headquarters. They'd go, right, the team in the restaurant, they are testing out steaks today. They're going to put them through their paces, and they're going to try some of the dishes. You guys can go down as well. Try and make the steaks to the right spec, so whether they're medium well or whatever, and give them a try and see what they're like. And I remember that day really well, and it must have been, I don't know, easily 10 years ago. I remember tasting the steaks and thinking, oh, these were amazing. And I think part of that has made me such an advocate of the Beefeater. We were there yesterday.
You got a loyalty card though, aren't you?
Yeah, but that doesn't really drive me there. I think it's just, I feel really loyal to them because I've been part of the process of tasting it, responding to it. Yeah.
But they call that back to the floor, don't they? In some businesses. But my experience with back to the floor. I mean, for those of you listening to this, in different countries, you might have it called back to the floor. You might call it something completely different. And what back to the floor means is you get people that work in the offices to go and work in the operation, usually for a day. And my experience would be that when that used to roll round, 90% of the people would moan about it and go, "Oh, that's not my job. I don't want to do that." And then you would get given a job, and what would happen is the operation would look and know that they had a load of people coming from the office, and they'd give them the worst job they could possibly give them. I remember, I mean, in some ways it did massively open my eyes. I worked in a KFC, and I wasn't behind the counter because I wasn't trusted enough to be behind the counter talking to customers because I didn't know what was going on. I was absolutely bewildered by it all. So I was in the kitchen, but even then I wasn't given the highest responsibility of looking after the chicken. Oh, no. The colonel didn't want to give me that. He said, you're going to be on the chips or the fries if you're in America. And what that basically consisted of was, bearing in mind, I had no preparation to go there. We were just told on the Monday that on Tuesday you're going back to the floor. What do I need to wear? I'm just wear what you got on now. And I had a shirt and some trousers on. So I turn up to a KFC in shirt and trousers. And they go, right, you're in the kitchen. Okay, fair enough. We're doing something with chicken and all that. No. You're going to be on the fries. Okay, so take me to the fry counter. And what's in front of me is like just a look like an oasis of black liquid bubbling away in front of me. And I'm looking at it and it's going... I should have had the sound effect ready for this, but bubbling away. And then at the side of me, to the right, where my hand was a load of fries, uncooked fries. So what I had to do is I had to take a handful of these fries, put them in the baskets, drop them into the oil, cook them for a set amount of time. I had a little timer that I pressed, boom, off they go. Take them out, throw them into like a big metal sort of like dustbin thing. And then I had to scoop them out using this like metal thing. And that is harder than it looks. So those of you that work in that in the sort of areas, putting the fries into the cardboard containers, that is tricky to do. I was having a shocker. And then I was putting the fries on the on the the little slider, when you see the people on the front desk on the kiosk. And they're taking their orders, and the burgers are sliding down that thing, from the kitchen, and they're putting their hand in and filling the baskets. You're not nodding, Sharon, so I'm guessing you don't know what I'm on about.
Yeah, I know exactly what you're about. Yeah.
All right, okay, so maybe a bit of feedback would be great. But anyway, so I'm putting the fries on there, and they're getting rejected. So they're rejecting my fries, and they're coming round, they're kicking off because this is at the height of lunch. And they're going, I can't give that to the customer. What are you doing, Mark? And I'm going, and there was no AC. It was just a very sweaty, hard process. And that was my back to the floor experience. But where I think that stuff really falls down is you never get the leadership doing it.
Yeah, and
It's always the office people that get to go do it, and the leadership go off for the day or do whatever. You can walk around the operation as a leader with your clipboard and your pen and talking to people, but unless you actually go through that process, you have no idea what it's like to be a customer.
Yeah, and that's when we do the White Pumpkins, having the leaders in the room and wandering around with the team, engaging with the team, listening, observing, and actually being part of those discussions makes such a big difference. It really does. As you touched on it there, when a leader does turn up, quite often they get pulled into a discussion behind the scenes of, oh, there's this performance issue, can I have a chat with you? And what you're doing is that.
Just do this, just do that.
Yeah, and they end up talking about payroll or something like that. And you had to come on, we're looking at the breakfast at the moment. Like, what's the breakfast operation? And then when they engage, they go, oh, why have we got all the
Why do we do it like that? Why is that like that? That's either wasting money or blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, why are the knives at the height that a child or a toddler can grab hold of, which is what I saw in a restaurant a little while back. And you could see them going, right, this isn't right. I'm going to change this immediately. And before we'd even left the restaurant, done. It makes such a difference to have a leader there. Then they go back and talk to the rest of the team about it. They've lived it. And then you start seeing that advocacy coming through. So you want it, not just the team, but definitely the leadership as well. And if you can get the exec involved, amazing.
But you can't do pre-planned eating of the dog food. What I mean by that is, how many times have you seen that? Take a CEO of a big business. Again, I'm going to pick on Whitbread here. So when, what was his name? He was the CEO of EasyJet as well. I don't want to say Alan Parker. I want to say, I can't remember the dude's name. He was before Alison Britton, the CEO now. I mean, maybe that's how memorable he was, but yeah. The CEO at the time of Whitbread, Andy Harrison. That was it, Andy Harrison. So whenever he would go out on the operation, it would be a big pre-planned event. So they would know weeks in advance that he was coming. The store would be absolutely cleaned to the perfection. The staff with the best engagement scores or the best performance reviews would be put on front of house. It would be a make-believe operation. So in Andy's defense, he would come and see this and go, wow, look at how good we are at this. We're fantastic. Whereas those eating your own dog food events, if I could be so bold to say, if I was in his position, I would just disappear and turn up to the operation, because obviously you'd be recognised once you get there, but once you're there, it's hard to change it. And then you get to see the reality of what's actually happening in your operation. So for you people that are watching this who are senior leaders, please stop. Unless it's a safety procedure where you need to have a pre-planned event, if it's RAMs or anything like that. But if it's just a normal operation, don't do the weeks and weeks in advance. Just turn up and get a real understanding of what's going on in your business.
Yeah, and sorry if I was looking down. I was looking because we've got a whole chapter of this in the book where we talk really distinctly about that, because all that happens is 2 or 3 days before the visit, they call all of the staff in. So everyone who should be on holiday is called in. As you say, everyone does everything running around like a mad thing. And they said the person doesn't see the full picture. But after they've left, everyone's back on, everyone who should have been
back to
taking
normal.
those days. Well, worse, everyone then disappears because they should have been on holiday or they should have been off sick or whatever. And then they're like, right. Then the customer experience over the next couple of days then drops.
Yeah.
Like, we did all that extra work running around cleaning windows, etc. Now we're burnt out and right, okay, he's gone now.
So the customers turned up on those days and gone, whoa, what's going on here? This is great. God, have they had some new management in? And then they go away and come back and go,
Yeah. So there was somewhere in the book, and unfortunately can't lay my fingers on it directly, but it's something about being part of the furniture. So just drop in, and this works great if someone lives locally to a couple of different outlets or pubs or whatever it is you're industry in, and they just go and work there on the way home, and they just sort of sat there in the service station or whatever, just joining in. And if they see something, oh, do you know what, that person behind the counter is really struggling, I'll go over and help. I'll do the chips, or I'll man the till. And then just carry on doing that rather than just
something
making
trying to attack you then, Sharon?
Is that
Did your phone go off then?
Yes, that was our help desk calling. Didn't see the panic.
Yeah. Yeah. So because we do something quite similar-ish. So we obviously really appreciate our engineers that are on site, but our engineers can be on a site for a day, a week, and the clients can differ depending on what the job is at the time. But our COO, one of the jobs that he's got is he will just arrive on a site where the engineers are for a couple of days. And this isn't just to be nosy to see what they're doing. Of course, there is an element of that. But it's more so that he wants to be able to know that the customer is getting exactly the values that we portray out to the world. Because there's nothing worse, is there, than when you can read. No, I'll take that a different way. There is nothing worse than when you go to engage a client for a specific service, and let's say you have it's a big deal, and you've got senior management involved in that. And these people, he or she, will be very slick, and they will tell you a fantastic story about how their business runs and how their business operates, which is great. And you would expect that when you're going to buy that service or engaging with that client. And then maybe then you've got someone who then does the finer details of the agreement. And again, it's a fantastic experience. You're absolutely loving it. But then where the rubber meets the road and you've got people on site actually delivering what you've bought, if those two are not aligned, then you feel like you've been missold. I mean, how many times have you in your corporate career, Sharon, have you ever engaged an external agency for something in the businesses you worked in, for marketing or whatever it might be? And I've said these words where I've specifically said, are you going to be the person working on my account? Because if you're not, I want to know who that person is. Because it's a very different experience.
It is. Yeah, it really is. And that's because you get sold something. And quite often those people who are doing the selling are so far away from the end user. So they know the premise of what the product or service should be. They know how to sell it. But have they actually ever tried it? Have they ever actually, somebody will say, well, what's the support system? Is it 24/7? And they'll go, yeah. And you know full well that they don't really know and they've never tried it, but they're just saying the things that you want to hear. And that's why you can set expectations for a customer, and then the ops team who actually physically have to deliver this. That's why you have such a mismatch, and then you end up with bad CX.
And this is for me why you need a CXO. And it's not a case of having a senior member of a board with a bolt on. I mean, we used to see that back in the day with sustainability or CSR. You'd have the chief operations officer and CSR director, same person, but one part of their job is the revenue generator and the other part of their job is the nice to have. And you've got 90% of their time being taken up being a COO and 10% of their time being a CSR director, and it would never really be taken seriously. Now, I know they were a figurehead and they were a board member, but having it as a doesn't really give it its credibility. And that for me is the same when it comes to customer experience. Until you start to see, I mean, you're seeing it now in some ways with younger companies. So ourselves, for example, Sharon, you're our CXO, and that will always be the way. That will just be a role that we will have in this business. And you see it as well with other startup businesses, even bigger businesses than ours, but younger businesses. But you look at more well-established organizations outside of the tech sector. If you look at FM, for example, the sector that we're very prominent in, you show me a CXO on any of those boards. And I don't mean someone who's got not a HR director and marketing or CSR or whatever it might be. Show me someone sat there who is accountable for CXO and for being a CXO. And Sharon, please explain to our listeners that there is a big difference, isn't there, between, well, I've got a customer services department and an actual board member CXO. Can you just bring that to life for us and just explain what that means?
I mean, customer service is normally the recovery part. So when it goes wrong, that's when somebody then deals with your customer service team. You don't ever really want anyone to have to interact with your customer service team if all they do is recover the customer because they've had an issue. So customer services often gets confused with customer experience. Sometimes they're used interchangeably. So we just say that up front. Customer experience is the whole bit from researching your company to onboarding to experiencing everything, having whatever system or service or product, all the way to offboarding and leaving. If that's so that whole customer experience. So having a CXO or a board member who's completely accountable for the whole end to end and oversees it all, that's when you really get the magic, because it is your job to understand how it all fits together. And if there's something wrong over here, you know it's going to fit over there. It's going to hit over there as well and make a real issue. So having someone who's actually properly accountable, not looking at the stats and just going, right, this week we've got this many complaints, or great, we've only got one complaint this week that's coming through. It's not about that. It's looking at, you're basically the customer advocate, and your role is to make sure you've got customer centricity threaded all the way through the whole company, and it's the way you do things. And that means things like when you go and first meet a potential employee, you understand how they tick and how they think about customers and their customer empathy, right the way through to, okay, what does our marketing say? How easy is it to shop with us? What if I've got a problem? What happens then? Do I just get dropped? How difficult is it to read my bill? It's every single aspect of a corporate or a startup or the business. It could be a charity. It's a hospital. It's every single part of that customer journey through the customer's eyes, and putting that same vision through the customer's eyes through every single person in that business, whether it's an investor, whether it's a supplier, a third party, because quite often they're the ones who end up being close to the customer, or the employees, everybody.
So it's almost like having if I've understood that correctly, it's almost like you've got a customer sat on your board, because in the nicest sense of the word, a CXO thinks very differently than a CFO or a COO or a HR director or whatever it might be. Because I could imagine, though, if I put my devil's advocate hat on, I could imagine that a CXO role could probably rub a little bit against other departments, because you could imagine, I don't know, let's say you've got a chief marketing officer who wants to do a fantastic campaign, and they've thought really hard about it, and it's beautiful and it's elegant, and it just really portrays the brand. But then if you were to put the lens in it and go, okay, I get that, what about the customer? Now, you might be sat there thinking, why would they do that? They're in the marketing department. Of course they would have nailed that. How many marketing campaigns have you seen out there recently that have got this really, really wrong? And I mean really wrong, to the point where potentially they're causing some very difficult conversations to be happening within their social media channels. Now, I'm not saying that a CXO would necessarily solve that from happening, but I'm saying, yes, have a fantastic campaign, but if you've got that lens of the customer going, ooh, how is this going to be seen by our customers? Well, my customer's going to think about this. That could either work very well with a chief marketing officer, or it could rub. I can imagine that would be quite an interesting conversation to have.
Yeah, I mean, certainly from a commercial point of view, quite often the challenges or the conflicts come when there's prioritization. So you've only got a set amount of cash in a corporate. You've got this many project managers, or this many change and business teams in IT. And you've got to go through and prioritize your projects. And they go, right, okay then. So I'm talking about big corporates here, very broadly, but kind of you quite often go, right, well, these ones are going to bring in they're going to generate revenue. So we're going to do those, no brainer. And then you look at those and go, okay, but that's actually going to make it harder for a customer to do business with us, or it's going to throw confusion in. While we put in this fantastic new system over here, all we're doing is having two systems running at the same time, which means two till systems for a customer, for an employee to look up and serve our customers. How are we managing that? And they're like, yeah, but over time, over 5 years, the return on investment is blah, 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 blah. And they forget that actually there's such a knock-on effect. So the commercials of things like customer complaints and customer compensation, and the amount of people that you're going to have to, the extra heads you're going to have to put into the customer service team to cope with the disruption that this ROI is going to bring, that often isn't on the radar of someone who thinks commercially, because they forget that things like disruption caused by a big IT project is going to actually cause you more cost in the long run if you haven't thought about the impact on customers and employees. So yes, as a CXO, you have to put your hand up and go, we need to think about the customer here. We have to do a test. We have to speak to employees. We have to understand. This is why you have to get under the covers of what's actually going on in your business. You can't assume. You can't go, well, putting in new IT systems, got to be the right thing, without actually checking and making sure somebody is holding that customer flag and going, let's just think about this first. And the employee flag, they're very closely integrated.
Well, yes. And then from a commercial point of view, sometimes you've got to make those hard decisions. But what if I'm hearing that right, what you're saying there is it's not a case of going, we're going to do this and it's going to generate revenue, but it's also going to have a knock-on effect for the customer. It could also be we're going to do this and we know it's going to have a knock-on effect for the customer, but these are our support mechanisms to make it so it's not a crash landing, it's just a bumpy landing as a result of that. But without that CXO position, you are looking at it from a ones and zeros point of view and going, well, either I'm going to generate revenue doing this or I'm going to save cash by doing this. But no one's saying, well, how is either of those decisions going to impact the customer both negatively and positively? Because I'm pretty sure as well, Sharon, you'll have companies that are doing campaigns or doing initiatives where the benefits for the customer can be fantastic, but the business is leaving them on the table because they're not explaining the benefits clearly enough or making the customer understand actually what value they could be got out of this specific initiative. Because again, without that role there to look at it from a customer point of view, you can be leaving cash on the table to generate more revenue for your business.
Yeah, and quite often if you do have a very commercial business, the way to go with it is something like a Lean Six Sigma type of approach. Because if you go through all of the processes, certainly ones like customer complaint handling or billing, for instance, quite often you find there's lots of fat and waste in those processes. So if you go through and say this is a process optimization, you'll find that when you do that, you can make it easier and more streamlined for customers and employees, and still find ways to save cash as well. So you hit both buckets. So sometimes if a business is really commercialized and isn't thinking in a customer way, you start off that way. Okay, we've got some fat we can strip out here, some waste. Find out what those are, add your monetary tags to it, that will save X amount. But know that at the same time, you're improving the process for customers and employees, and then you work out what those metrics are as well and add those in. And next time round, you make them much more customer and employee centric and show what the success was on that previous one that was sort of badged more as a commercial program.
Awesome. Last 30 seconds, Sharon. Is there anything else you would like to add?
I'd say if you haven't, it's the call to action in the chapter really. If you have not eaten your own dog food recently and you are one of the people who makes decisions, or you do guide customers or employees through, pick up go and look at your website, pick up the phone and try out your help desk, go and visit one of your shops. And if you need help in doing this as a team, or you want to explore your processes or customer journey more widely, give me a tinkle and I'll help you do it.
Ooh. And with the music starting, that's the end of the show. Thank you, Sharon. Really appreciate that. Professional read through, if not some notes to be taken at the end, but we'll get it better on part 2. Welcome, everyone, and goodbye, everyone. Say goodbye, Sharon.
Bye. Have a good week.